And we're live.
Well, hello everyone. This is Dr. Alan Weinstein, and welcome to Building Your Wellness Brand Within Your Community. I'm here on behalf of myself and my co-host, Dr. Randi Ross. Today's episode is brought to you by Epic Consulting, making sure your electronic presence is all it needs to be, and Community Wellness Day. Every great opportunity begins with the first step. Take that step with Community Wellness Day. And the System, the official marketing program of healthcare providers everywhere, and the VIP app, the only application that allows you to bring your live hangouts just like this one to the desktop, smartphone, and tablet of everyone we know, and someone's playing in the background there. Our apps are so good, people are going to want to lick them. Just released the Google Plus in 10 minutes, a complete step-by-step guide to all things Google for your business. You could check that out at tinyurl.com/Google in 10. Today's community health program is an interview with the king of patient retention, Dr. Miles Bodzin. Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Miles. Dr. Miles Bodzin is the founder and CEO of Cash Practice Systems. He's a chiropractor who became known as the king of patient retention. Over the decades, Dr. Bodzin has perfected the cash practice systems, while in his own practice, which had a patient visit average of over 300. That's not 300 visits a week, that's 300 per patient. He appeared in the Wall Street Journal on the Brian Tracy TV show. He's written a best-selling book with Steve Forbes and speaks internationally on the topic of client retention. His company offers web-based software for chiropractors to implement his four-step process, resulting in increased patient retention. The Wellness Score System, Cash Plan Calculator System, Orbit Debit System, and Drip Education Email Marketing System all work together to help free a doctor from the shackles of insurance dependence. Today, the cash practice systems have helped thousands of chiropractic offices collect more cash in their practices, skyrocket their patient retention, and reduce their dependence on insurance. Learn more at www.cashpractice.com or call 877-343-8950. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, Dr. Randi Ross.
Well, hello everyone and welcome. We've been out on vacation or holiday, depending upon where you're joining us from, for the last 2 weeks. Hope everyone had a wonderful holiday season, and we're kicking off 2015 with a really awesome guest. Dr. Allen and I both have known Dr. Bodzin for many years. He's really an integral part of the success package of most chiropractic offices, and he has so much to share with you on how to be successful. And something that's so important for all health practitioners listening with us today is how to really steer yourself away from being dependent on insurance. It's such an important element, and it's something that we wanted to kick off the year with. So without any further ado, we're going to bring on Dr. Miles Bodzin. Hi, Miles. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Randy. Thanks, Alan, having me on your program.
Well, we are excited to have you. And Miles, you know, we talk about here, you know, something that we feel is so important, and I know it's something that you share as well. How important it is in building relationships as far as you know, the success of your business. And even though your focus is on how, when the patients are in the practice, how to keep them there, and you know, and how to make sure that you're monetizing your experience with them as much as possible. But I know you're a very successful businessman, and share with us your thoughts a little bit on how you feel personally building relationships and ultimately building trust in those relationships, how it's impacted your business.
I'm glad you start off with that question. I think it's the cornerstone of building a successful business is relationships. And you know, there's a saying, I didn't make up the saying, I heard it and I gravitate to it, and that is people buy from people. Ultimately, that's what people buy from. And as a business person, as a service provider, if we're talking to the business people watching right now that are service providers, whether they be chiropractors or medical doctors or therapists or massage therapists or whoever's watching out in the Google world right now, you know, at the end of the day, it's about building the relationship. And people buy from a person. They don't, and if you don't capitalize on that that idea, you end up becoming a commodity where people will just choose to go to whoever's the cheapest around. And so a lot of what I talk about when it comes to business building relationship is all about how do you create a sense where you are the go-to person, where you are the it. You know, you notice behind me I have, you know, trophies and accolades behind me and things that show, you know, credibility per se, and I think doctors need to do that type of thing, and people need to do the type of thing to show that you're something special, that so people, you know, people want to hang out with you per se, or people want to be associated with you per se. It all comes, you know, to when you're building a relationship. Why do people want to hang out with you? Why do people want to do business with you? What makes you special? And, you know, in our own little worlds of our communities of where we run our businesses per se, are you a quote-unquote celebrity in your community where people know your name at the moment's notice? When they think of who's the local chiropractor, does your name pop up because you're the go-to person, the known person? You know, so I can go on and on about the topic of that, but I want to kind of turn it back over to you and see where we go with this.
No, and I think that's so true, and it's funny. I always use this tagline from I really mixed up his name, Hilton Johnson or Johnson Hilton. You know, he says, you know, become a celebrity in your community, and the business will just come to you.
Absolutely.
And I think it's, you know, the reason why this is a focus, and this has really become my passion within the healthcare profession of what we do, is because I think it's such a huge disconnect for so many, I'll call them small business owners, the healthcare providers, by not thinking and understanding that you get so much more out of building a relationship, especially with those people in your community that are what I call have, you know, power and influence, not necessarily directly with them, because they're going to connect you with people, and those relationships people view as credibility. If a mayor recommends you to speak somewhere or something along those lines, that gives you credibility, because a politician's not going to put themselves out there for someone that they don't feel is valuable, credible, and ethical in their communities. So,
absolutely.
You know, tell me a little bit about, you know, I just mentioned that I think there's this huge disconnect. What do you think are, let's just say, 3 roadblocks that really prevent, you know, you deal with hundreds of practitioners every year, Alan and myself as well. What do you think are the 3 biggest roadblocks that really prevent them from getting out there and building this community credibility that will ultimately fill their practice?
That's a great question. You know, from the standpoint of roadblocks, 3 of them, you know, I have some ideas in my mind. One of them would be the failure to focus on retention. You mentioned before that, you know, I bring up, you know, I tend to focus on retention. I think it's a roadblock to success in a lot of businesses, is that they put so much emphasis always on how do I get more new clients, always the new, you know, acquiring new people. And they don't really put a lot of attention per se in what really needs to happen to build that relationship, so they stay with you and you keep that client. And we know, you know, it's been estimated that getting new clients is 7 times more expensive than keeping a client. That your profitability of keeping a client is 7 times higher than it is to go out and acquire a new client. So it totally makes sense, you know, from a profit standpoint, as well as if you just put the emphasis around that, everything else kind of falls into place. And I think it's one of the reasons I've experienced the success I've had in business, is because that's where our emphasis has always been, is how do you build a relationship so that you have this long-term relationship. So that's number 1, is putting an emphasis, actually creating a culture around it, where that it actually becomes a culture of your businesses. Is this, how do you, like, here's what I mean by culture. I can't remember the CEO's name, but the guy that runs Zappos out in Las Vegas, they have a culture of, they're not in the business of selling shoes. Their culture is, we're in the business of providing service. We just happen to provide shoes as our product. But they're a service company, which means they are there to serve their customers and build long-term relationships. It just so happens they deliver a product called shoes. And when I heard that, I read that, and I said, wow, that so resonates with me, because I've always said in our own practice, we're a service company. We just happen to deliver the product of chiropractic. And now running Cash Practice, we're a service company that happens to deliver the product of our Cash Practice services. But putting service first and building that relationship and putting that emphasis, I think, is a key thing, and that so many practices and businesses do not put enough emphasis in. They have a heroin addiction to getting new clients all the time. That's their constant focus of that. I have some notes I want to refer to here. A second one is, let's see here. What did I say here? There's actually more than 3, you know, you were asking the question, I just want to make sure I got the, you were asking the 3 roadblocks, right?
The 3 biggest ones that, or the most, you know, noticeable ones that you found.
the most notable, I want to give some of the listeners some kind of things they can sink their teeth into. One of the ones that I think is so noticeable, there's actually 4 that I've identified from the standpoint of not putting emphasis on retention per se. There's 4 areas per se that doctors can focus on, or just generally any business person can focus on to make sure that they have the end game being I'm providing that high retention level. And that is when doctors or businesses fail to communicate the severity of the need for their service. When doctors fail to confirm, and being a chiropractor and being most of our people watching are chiropractors, I'll speak the language of chiropractic. When you fail to communicate to your patients the severity of their issues, and you fail to communicate progress towards goals to resolve those issues, that is a major issue. Here's what I mean by that, is that there's actually a psychological need people have to know they're making progress towards a goal. And when we study behavioral psychology, we come to understand this, that the failure of a doctor to communicate during re-exams and during the course of care that that patient is making progress towards an end goal, it's one of the leading reasons people will leave that doctor and then ultimately seek care from another doctor. Ask yourself, doctors watching this right now, have you ever had a patient come to you who's been to other doctors, other chiropractors, and they come to you and you say, well, why are you coming to me now? Why are you not going back to the previous doctor? And they say things like, well, I didn't know how I was doing over there. I just felt like they wanted me to keep coming back, or they have some negative comment like that. And it's because the doctor really failed to effectively communicate progress towards some set goal. So doctors, one of the challenges or obstacles to success or building long-term relationships, okay, a long-term relationship, I'm going to equate that to retention. Obviously, the better the relationship, the better the retention. One of the blockages of that is your failure to communicate appropriately that they're making progress towards a goal. Another one would be the failure to make it affordable for your clients. That's another one that's really a big obstacle, that you're not going to have a long-term relationship with people unless you make it easy for them to purchase your services. You know, I often use the analogy that when people see TV commercials for new cars on television, they don't show the cost of the car. They show an easy, affordable monthly payment, usually the lowest lease payment available, because that speaks the language to the consumer, so that it makes it easy for them to say, yeah, I can afford that, I can actually do that. And so many offices, so many businesses, so many practices don't present their care, their recommendations, whatever it may be, in a way that is easily consumable by the customer or the patient. Another common one would be the thought of money, quite frankly, the repeated thought of money. We know that the more often your customers are reminded that they're paying you, that they're thinking about the cost of the services, the less likely they're going to continue with the service. That's just not unique to chiropractic. That's common in almost any business. We even see today now, Disneyland, for example, the Disney company is now offering you the ability to auto-renew an annual Disney pass and have your payments automatically deducted every month, so you can continue as a lifetime Disney client. There's an example where they're not doing that to make it easier on you because it's easier to buy. They're not doing it because making it easier for them to accept payments. They're doing it because it ends up resulting in a longer relationship with that customer as a result of that. There's 3 of the 4. A 4th one I'll just quickly mention, and that is the world of educating your clients, of automating education, so that your clients are continuously getting dipped or dripped upon constant information going on to validate their reasons for seeking your services and knowing why they should be able to refer other people to you, etc. Per se. So maybe a long-winded answer to your question, but that's my feeling about from the standpoint of some of the biggest obstacles, the biggest challenges I see in consulting with doctors and businesses of why they don't see these long-term relationships panning out for them.
Well, Dr. Allen is unmuted, so that means he's ready to fire a question.
There you go. So I have a couple of things. I totally agree with what you said, and in fact, in the marketing system that we offer to chiropractors or health professionals, even that are outside the chiropractic realm, we also tell them that 70% of your marketing should be directed towards your current patients. That's the greatest source of patients that you have, and so I'm with you 100%. But I want to go back to the credibility issue, and I want you to talk about how does somebody new getting into the game establish that credibility when they don't really have the experience and have not developed those relationships yet. Go back to when you first started Cash Practice, when you were a chiropractor, working out the things that eventually became Cash Practice. How were you able to develop that credibility so that people saw, wow, I want Miles to come to either my seminar or attach to my tribe so they can find out about what he's doing? What were the steps you took to get that exposure that you needed?
Great question. When I first got started in practice, of course, to bring brand new, just with no background like you're bringing up. If I go all the way back to that time period, what did I do? I started doing a lot of public speaking. And now let me clarify. One of the things I've always thought is that when you go out and speak or when you educate, and you do that with the sense that there's going to be some financial decision being done at the end of it, meaning like you're going to communicate with a person, and the ultimate aim of that education is to make a sale. Especially in today's savvy world, people pick up on that. They know it. They feel sold, and you can't do that. That'll destroy credibility. What you need to do is you need to be able to serve for the sake of serving, and then people will seek you out. So what I did back then to establish credibility was I spoke, and now I didn't do it in my office. I did it at the local library. So here's an idea I often share with doctors. Go out to your local library. It's free to use a room there, and put on community workshops once a month with no sales pitch, none whatsoever. You're doing it for the sake of serving. That's one way to build leads and just gain some credibility. I think it's a lot easier today to do things with social media, as well as one of my favorites. In fact, I got the book sitting right here. I just connected with these guys. I'll give them a real shout out right now. These guys that own this company for doing your own books. I personally think today to contract with a company to have your own book written so that you use that as your platform to be able to communicate with people. Here, I'm the author of this book. Why do you think I wrote the book back there? I wrote the book back there, or contributed to that book for that same very purpose, so that I have some sense of authority. Why did I get myself featured in the Wall Street Journal and get that type of thing happen? You do those kinds of things because in people's eyes it says, wow, this person's somebody. They obviously have something important to say. And you can do that in your local community. Again, books, whether it be writing articles. One of the things I did in practice is I advertised in the local paper. But it wasn't an advertisement. I paid for it because I needed to pay for the space, but it was simply a column. I called it the Wellness Report. And I wrote dozens upon, probably hundreds of columns that I paid to put in the paper, but they were strictly educational in nature. There were no call to actions. There was no sales pitch. It was just strictly, here's an article for you to read that I had to have. Obviously, I paid to put that in the paper. And because it was written as a column, and it looked like I was it appeared as if I was a columnist for the local paper. There's an example of something. So there's lots of ways of, let me say this. Credibility, in my opinion, comes from a simple formula. It comes from a formula of rapport, trust, and hope. When you put out in the community a combination of rapport, you build rapport with an audience, whether it's one-on-one with a person or through an audience or through a writing, you establish a sense that they could trust you, and it's very easy to build trust. It really is. Quite frankly, it is. It's whenever you provide information with nothing attached to it. It's whenever you provide a solution in spite of the fact that you're not the solution. Let me give you a perfect example where doctors will see this in play. There's a company out there, a small company out there called Progressive Insurance. You've heard of them, right? You've seen them TV advertisements. And what have they got so famous for doing? They would give you their quote, and then they would show you the quotes of other companies. And oftentimes, sometimes the quotes of other companies was better than their own quote. That made you incredibly trustworthy of that company, that they would actually refer you to another company if the other company gave you a better. There's a perfect example of demonstrating that they were on a mission to create trust with their audience. And the third is creating hope. And us doctors, we're good at doing that by showing what potentially people could have with their health, by demonstrating it through this art of storytelling and telling stories about other people who've done well with chiropractic and the services you provide, and demonstrating that there's hope for the audience in front of you, whether it be through written word or through speaking or through video, whatever it may be. So when doctors put an emphasis around this formula that I've been teaching for a long time, rapport, trust, and hope, the ultimate reaction to that is, this is the right person for me. I'm in the right place. They have my best interest at heart. I want to do business with them. So that's kind of the formula I've always applied for this relationship building, and all the way back to the beginning of just serving for the sake of serving. Anyway, that's my long-winded answer again to your question.
No, that's great. And one of the things that we do with our clients is we interview them, and we give them this great, gorgeous DVD case where they can go into a business and say, here's my latest interview. We do ebooks for them, like the book that you're talking about from that company. Those kind of things that we do there. And I want to talk about two other things, and then I'll turn it back over to Dr. Randi, and that is a couple of things. Number one is I think that doctors also need to, number one, realize that not every person that comes through the door is the right match for them. Not everyone is qualified to be a patient, customer, or client. And I think you need to learn not to be so hungry that you think everybody is, because just like you said before, when you go somewhere and your main objection is to sell something or, rather than provide that information, it's very obvious that you're there because you're hungry. So you have to really learn how to either qualify or disqualify people. And I'm sure even in your business, you've done that all along to recognize, hey, if I stick with the clients that are qualified for me, they will lead to other clients that are qualified for me. Would you say that's true for you too?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And the ability to turn someone away, saying, "Listen, we're not the solution for you," it just lends to your credibility. It does. It actually does. And in fact, one of the things we'll often teach doctors when they're communicating with a patient is one of the first things we talk about. You communicate to people is that my job first and foremost is to find out if you're even in the right place, if I'm even the right doctor for you, and if I'm not, I'll let you know. That's one of the ways that's one of the trust building techniques we use is, being right up front with people, letting them know, listen, I'm not here, I can't say I'm going to accept you right away. I don't even know if you're in the right place yet, but based upon your history, it certainly sounds like that could be the case. But let me tell you, we're looking for this thing up here on the wall, this picture of, shows a spine animal. We're looking for that. If you have it, I can help you. If you don't have it, probably not the right doctor for you, but I'll help you find the right doctor. That type of stuff.
Yeah, and I think people don't realize that when you do that, if that person is really not qualified to be in your office, the person that they know, they will then say, which will build trust for them, say, I went to see Dr. Bodzin. I wasn't really, it wasn't something that he could help me with, but he was honest to tell me that, so you should definitely check him out. And they become a referral source.
Absolutely. And I've also, I've said it kind of the same line, you turn give me 12 skeptical people and I'll build a practice around that. Give me 12 people who are questioning, because you could speak the language that, when someone is questioning things, which a lot of times people are when they come in, and you speak the language like, listen, I'm not here to tell you anything, I'm here to be straight with you. It resonates with you. And I think today's world, it's even more important with how bombarded everybody is with, Google Hangouts and with webinars and emails coming at them and text messages and constantly having stuff coming at them. People are looking for that'll never go out of fashion. It'll never go out of fashion for you to be authentic and real with people and serve for the sake of serving, no matter what the trend is.
Maz, what I want to do in our remaining minutes is we talked about all the different variables that you shared with us. Let's give them some real, what's the first step? It's 2015. It's the beginning of a new business year for everyone. If you had to tell them what's the first step to really embarking on growth in their practice for 2015, what would you tell them to do?
That's a great question, and I wish I had one answer for you. It really depends. For me to give a meaningful answer like, doctor, what you should do, we need to identify, are they having a problem attracting people? Are they having a problem converting those leads into patients? Or are they having more of a problem of keeping those patients? I mean, there's three areas. Either you're attracting, converting, or retaining. And the question is, where are they having the challenge? So for the doctors who are having challenges attracting people, where you need to start is what you have to do to attract more people. And if you're having problems with conversions, then you need to find out, what do I need to do to get better conversions? And what's the, and if the issue is retention, well, then you need to take action to do retention. So for me to say one thing, I mean, I'm not one to just give a generic answer per se. Yeah, go out and get more business, and go out and write a book, or go out and write a blog, or use your service, and they're all great things, and we need to all do all of it. But what helps that one doctor the most depends on what challenge they're having. And I've always considered myself a solution provider. Or in order to provide a solution, you got to know what the challenges are, what the problem is first. Maybe that comes from my engineering background per se, but I got to know what the problem is that we're solving first. So it's a new year, okay? Rather than throwing crap on the wall, you may have all the new patients you need in the world, and I say go out and do talks and get more new people, but that isn't what you need per se. So doctors, here's what I would say. Here's what I would say is the way you start the year off. Identify what your problem is, and here's a simple way you could do this. Ask yourself this question, doc. If I had 20 new patients coming in a month, just pick a number, 20, 30, 40, doesn't really matter. Out of those 20 new patients, ask yourself this question. How many of them signed up for my program of care? Meaning you recommended a program of care and they said yes. And they actually enrolled in the program. Not that they said, well, let me try it out for a couple of visits. Not that patient. I'm saying this is the person you did a report of findings with, you made a recommendation, and they said, yes, I'm starting care, and they with the intention of completing it. How many of the 20 said that? Next, of those people who said yes, ask yourself this next question. How many of them got to my first reevaluation, where I'm checking their progress again? How many got to that point where maybe a month into it, they're still with you? Then ask yourself the question, of those people who made it there, how many of them completed the program? And the next question you want to ask is, of those who completed, how many transitioned to your ongoing, we'll call it wellness program? How many completed that or transitioned? And ask yourself, if you're seeing a large drop-off at any one of those points, if you're seeing a drop-off after your report, when you're signing people up, you're saying out of 20 people, only 15 signed up, and of those 15, all 14 or 15, got to the first re-exam, and 14 or 15, got to the end, and 14 or 15 went on to wellness care. That means you don't have a retention issue. You have no problem with those people staying. What you have is a conversion issue. If you have 20 people who come in and all 19 of them said yes and they're starting care, and of the 19, 18 got to the first re-exam, and 17 of them finished, but only 3 of them went on to wellness, then you have an issue with transitioning them to wellness. That's where your issue is. So you got to look at where you're potentially losing your people. And that's the first section. That most doctors I talk to don't know that. They don't know where they're losing them. So until you identify where the challenge is, the roadblock as we put it, I can't just give a generic answer. So identify, is it a conversion issue, meaning you're not getting them from your recommendations onto care? Is it a retention issue somewhere along the line? You're losing them by the first re-exam or by the end of care, you're not transitioning? Or do you have an attraction where I say how many 20 new patients, I can't even get 3 new patients? And there's maybe the issue is that. So I wish I had a better, I wish I could just give you a straight answer for that, but that's not the way I operate. The way I operate is I need to find the problem first. Alan,
I think that that is the best answer, the one you gave, and I'm going to add one piece to that because I totally agree with you. And that piece is, don't let other people dictate what their problem is and accept it as yours.
Right.
So if somebody says, buy my marketing program, get 35 new patients a month. Well, the reality is, if you don't have a problem with getting new patients, why are you buying their program? Right. If someone says, I'll get you on page 1 Google, but when you look at your stats on your website, you're getting 500 visitors every single month, but no conversions, why do you want to buy that program to get you on page 1 Google when you already have people coming to your web? So I think your answer was right on the money, and I totally agree with it, really.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that's 1,000% right, and I think most people try and solve a problem when they don't even know what the problem is.
Right. If I wanted to give you a generic answer and you asked me that question, I would say join Cash Practice. I would say come join our program, and that's the thing you should do. But that's not my answer. My answer is let's find the problem first and apply the right solution to your problem before we worry about what we're going to what crap we're going to throw at the wall.
And I think right there sometimes is a challenge for people, because I think sometimes they're actually afraid to determine what their problem is, because they're actually admitting, that they have an issue, that they're, that there's a level of success somewhere that they're not achieving. But we're going to start something new today. I'm going to do Randi's recaps, and we're going to just talk about a couple of the highlights for those of you that are listening, maybe even if you joined us a little bit late, to make sure you understand what Dr. Bodzin was really trying to convey, because his information was spot on. So, if you came in late, watch this in the replay. You're going to hear some really important things that, if you really think about, are going to take you to a different level in your business and have you recognize certain weaknesses that you can work on. People buy from people. I love that. That's what I talk about all the time. I teach relationship marketing. People want to know people. And it's such an important issue. Even if they land on your website and come in, there has to be a relationship, whether it's built outside of your office or in your office. You have to become a person to them. So that's really important. Building credibility. I say this all the time. We use Community Wellness Day as a tool to build credibility, because when you're out there in the community and you're building these relationships with all these people of power and influence, and you're getting in all these different medias, and you're doing it for something good for the community, it really elevates your credibility. The important thing that I always like to share with people about why credibility is more important now than probably ever in the history of healthcare is as people are paying out of their pocket more and more, you better have a high level of credibility, because if I'm going into my pocket to pay you, whether it's for myself or my family, well, then you better be the best person in town to help my family or to help myself solve our problems and our challenges. So that's really important, to keep your credibility. And even when you have it, don't rest on your laurels. You have to always be doing things to make sure that you're sustaining that, if not elevating it. Service first. I mean, this goes without saying. Nobody wants to feel sold. Nobody wants to feel like they're sitting in a sales pitch if they're in a workshop, or even if they're in just a lunch with you. I always tell people when I train them, when you go out to meet with someone, it should be about them. It's not about you talking about yourself. You're providing a service. If you learn how to listen to what people actually need, not what you think they need, and that's something else that Miles touched on, as health providers, we're not always great communicators because we want to tell people what we think they need to hear instead of listening to what their needs are and then delivering a solution to their problem. When you listen twice as much as you talk, which I always say God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, because you're supposed to listen twice when you talk, you're going to hear things where you can help people or when you can provide a service that you're going to totally miss out on when you go in with an agenda ready to deliver the information that you think people need to hear. So that level of service is really important. Communication. Everything in life that leads to success, whether it's in your personal life, whether it's in your business, whether it's between your staff, everything is about communication. If people don't understand why they're in your business, why they need to come to your business, how they're doing in the course of whatever your care is for them or whatever service you're providing, if they don't understand, Miles is 1,000% right. Most people probably lose patients, customers, clients, whatever applies to you, because you don't have the right communication with people. And that's something that you can work on. So I think 1,000%, figure out, look at your numbers, look at your stats, figure out where it's dropping off for you, because that's so important. That's where you want to focus. That's where you want to look at, what am I doing here that's not allowing me to continue the success that I would like to have. Rapport, trust, hope. Absolutely love that. And I think a little bit too, I'm going to add something here, is patience. These things don't come overnight. I don't train someone in the course of Community Wellness Day how to go out and meet with, a mayor or a senator to talk about, their event for their community, and in one meeting they're buddy-buddy and going to play golf and, getting invited to the latest gala and all that. It takes time, and you have to be a little patient. And I think also something that ties into that, that's so important, what Miles says, most health practitioners are new patient heroin addicts. We can't always be focused on the short term. How many new patients did I get from this? Focus on the ones that you have and have a little patience building your reputation in the community, with people that you're dealing with, to know that over time they're going to trust you, you're going to build that credibility, and that they will refer to you. So, I'm going to add patience to the hope part, because most of us are very impatient. And I think chiropractors, more than anyone, we have a horrible, horrible trait of judging everything we do for our business on how many new patients did I get out of this. Instead of worrying about, or sort of thinking about, not worrying about, well, I did this event or this talk or whatever, well, maybe I only got a handful of patients out of it that day, but what else is there that I can build upon so that opportunity that I had turns into much, much more business down the road. It's focusing on building on what you already have, the same thing that Miles shared with us about sometimes we need to focus on the retention and not always where's the latest, greatest shiny apple. All right, well, I think I talked enough here in our recaps, and I am going to turn it back over to Dr. Allen to close us out.
Okay, you've been listening to Building Your Wellness Brand Within Your Community. I'm Dr. Alan Weinstein with my co-host, Dr. Randi Ross. Here we go. Today's episode is brought to you by Epic Consulting, making sure your electronic presence is all it needs to be.
Dr. Allen, can you put Miles' slide up there for a minute at the end so everybody can see that after you go through us? The one
Say it
with,
again, I'm sorry?
when you get to the end, I just don't want to miss the slide where people can go and download the program that he has for them.
Yeah, no problem. I had that in my plan anyway. So, going back to closing out the show, today's episode was brought to you by Community Wellness Day. Every great opportunity begins with the first step. Take that step with Community Wellness Day. The System, the official marketing program of healthcare providers everywhere. The VIP app, the only application that allows you to bring your live hangouts just like this one to the desktop, iPhone, iPad, and all the Samsung devices. Google Plus in 10 minutes, a new program of everything you need for Google. You can find out more about that at tinyurl.com/Google in 10. And let me give you, here it is, to be able to get Dr. Miles' free download, just go to cashpractice.com. On behalf of myself, Dr. Alan Weinstein, our great guest, Dr. Miles Bodzin, and Dr. Randi Ross, we'll look forward to seeing you again next time.
Bye, everyone.